How are you guys? Anyway, this is our third lesson, and I wanted to, uh, and we, a couple people that were here the day before the break, we looked at this just ever so slightly, but we're going to look at it more closely now. So this is our, we've already learned how to factor. Let me go ahead and do a quick review, but we've already learned how to factor the problems like x squared plus 5x plus 6, say. And to factor this, if you remember, we would make our parentheses. We put an x here and an x here. And why is that? Well, the x and the x is the f of FOIL, if you remember when we multiplied. So the first two numbers, when we multiply out, need to give us the first term, that x squared. And then we had that O and the I and the L of FOIL. Now the L of FOIL produces this number here, all right? So we have to make sure that the two last numbers multiply to 6. There's only one way to do this one, and that's going to be 2 and 3. And the thing that we want to check, though, too, is that that middle term is 5. So the idea was, anyway, with what we were doing for the last lesson, is that we were trying to find two numbers that multiplied to 6 and then added up to positive 5. So that works fine as long as there is no, as long as there's a 1, as long as the coefficient of the lead term is 1. That's how we do it. And it's nice for most of them. That's how we're going to get it. But that's not always the case. Now, what I want to do right now is go to a different thought. And what I want to do is, let me just multiply two numbers. What did I just do? Okay, well, I'm just going to multiply two numbers. I want to show you something. So say I have something like 2x plus 1 times x plus 3. Now, if I multiply those two numbers out, I'm going to go, let's go ahead and do our FOIL. First, it's going to be 2x squared. Outsides, right, O of the oil is going to be plus 6x. And then the insides, I, is going to be 1x. And then the last two numbers, 1 and 3, give us 3. And then we put them all together, we get 2x squared plus 7x plus 3. Now, say I wanted to take this number and I wanted to factor it, in other words, go back to this. What I want you to notice is that it's no longer a case where the two numbers are adding to this, or multiplying to 3, and then adding to the 7x. Notice 3 plus 1 is not 7. So the technique that we used before is not going to work if we have a number in front of the x squared term that's not 1. And that's what we're going to be doing today, is factoring these types of problems. And to do this, what I'm going to ask you to do is there's something that I want you to work on, and that is a technique. This is our check technique, and I'm going to call it the OI technique. All right. So before we get into this, I should call it the OI check. The OI check. Now, whether or not you understand what I'm going to get at right now, I want you to do the OI check. That means the outside, inside. We multiply those together and add them up. So the OI check is going to be used when we have something like this. And the OI check means I want you to multiply the outside terms and the inside terms and add them together. And eventually I'd love you to be able to do this in your head. So it's going to be minus 15x plus 1 is minus 14x. So the OI check gives me a negative 14x. And now later on, I'll show you how we're going to deal with that. Let's do a couple. Can we just do a couple more? all right? 2x minus 5 times x plus 3. Let's do the OI check. I'm going to call it the OI check. O, 6x, I is minus 5x. So the OI check gives me 1x. Got it? We're going to use that OI check in a little bit. Last one. You do this one on your own. 5x plus 3 times, let me make it a little trickier, 2x minus 1. So see if you can, in your head, do the OI check. Did you get, oh, I got 1x again. Didn't mean to make it exactly the same as the one on top, but that's right. It's going to be minus 5x plus 6x for 1x. Okay, so OI check. Hopefully you've got that down. We're going to use that in a moment. All right? Now, we're going to move away from we're not going to be doing this exploration, but even though we may come back and try these little questions here. But let's go ahead to the next page. Again, if you don't have this page, if you want to, you can find this page on my essay under lesson 3, and you can print out what's called the blank note, the blank notes, and that way you'll have the questions and you can do all your notes on that packet. If you don't have a printer, just have a notebook out so that you can do the practice problems, all right? So anyway, now that we know how to do the OI check, and again, the OI check refers to the FOIL. All right, the OI check is the O in the I of FOIL. And the O in the I of the FOIL, if you remember, is what gives us the middle term, the 5x. So you can even do the OI check here. The OI check here is 3x and 2x for 5x. Interesting, right? As if you do the OI check, you should get the middle term. Okie dokie. Let's go ahead to the first example and see how we do. There we go. And so I'm going to invite you guys to go ahead and try a couple of these. And see how you do. So I'll go ahead and start you with the first one. You know, like actually, I don't even know if I want to start you in the first one, but I'll start by getting you these parentheses here. So what I'm going to ask you to do is see if you can't pause this video for a moment, and see if you can figure out what the binomial factors of this expression are. So pause the video now and take a shot at it. Okay, so the correct factorization will be 3x plus 2 times x plus 1. It may be that you tried 3x plus 1 times x plus 2, but your OI check here would give you 6x plus 1x for a total of 7x, and that won't work for you. Okay, so this next one is a little tricky, and I just want to remind you of what that means is that there's two ways for the first terms to multiply to become 4x squared, right? You could either have 4x and x, or it could be 2x and 2x. So, but the key thing is that this last number is -3. So there's only one way to multiply to get 3, but remember that one has to be positive, one has to be negative. So why don't you go ahead and try some combinations, and again, you're guessing here. You guess, and then you check with the OI check and see what happens. So give it a go. I'm going to pause, and you're going to go in and give it a go. Okay, if you did all your experimenting, you may have lucked out to get this final factorization here. Again, the first two, if you wanted to, you probably tried with the 4x and the x. You could go -1, +3. The OI check here gives you 11x. That's not good. So you might want to switch the numbers. I'm not sure if you did that to make this to make that the first number the 3 and the second one the 1 plus 3 minus 1. Remember, the signs have to be opposite because of the 3. In this case, what happens is you get a negative x, and that doesn't check out either. So what you're going to do is when you move over to this one, to this side, you can experiment again. You're going to either the number is going to be positive or negative. One thing that's worth remembering, though, is if you say you get a situation like this. Say you guessed 2x minus 3 and then 2x plus 1. You do the outside-inside check. Here you get negative 4x. Well, if the sign is different but the number is the same, just switch the signs, and that's going to give you the right answer. So that should be you make this a negative 1, and you make this a positive 3, and then it will work. And if you check, it's going to be, you're going to get outside-inside check is going to be 6x minus 2x for your positive 4x middle term. Okay, let's go last one. See if you can do it. If you can do this last one, you're probably in a good place to do the homework. Again, the homework is going to be done during our meet session coming up on next week, I guess. And so you can save your homework for then, or you can practice the homework on your own. Up to you. But I'm going to ask you right now to go ahead and I'll draw those parentheses, and you see if you can't figure out what the binomials are inside here. I'm going to pause now. So here is your factorization for that problem. Again, you're trying to get a positive 5, which means the signs have to be the same. Because the middle term is negative, if you make both the 5 and the 1 negative, you'll get what you want. Do the OI check. Negative 10 minus 1x for a total of negative 11x. If you had the signs different, actually that wouldn't do anything. You would have to. There has to be minus signs to give us the plus 5. So really, this is the only way we could have gotten the answer. So these aren't necessarily very easy, and they call for an awful lot of guessing. And because of that, I'm going to make the homework not too terribly long, so that you have the opportunity to set up all the different possibilities. It's a great time to have an eraser on your pencil, because you'll be, if you do it the way we've been doing it, you're just going to be erasing those last terms a lot until you finally get those last terms that multiply right. They're always going to multiply right, because we're always going to ensure that we have the L of FOIL and the F of FOIL. But the one thing that we'd never know for sure until we check is the outside and the inside. So the OI check, all right, is what we're going to be doing to make sure that that's the case. Well, it looks like we've come to the end of this amazingly not so long session, and hopefully you got some sense for what's going on. What we're doing again is we're moving from the more simple factorizations of the ones where we just add, we multiply to get the last term and add to get the middle term. That's out whenever we have a situation with a coefficient that's a lead in the lead term of the trinomial. Whenever we have a coefficient that's greater than 1, that means that we're going to have to do an awful lot of guessing and checking. So I would say that anytime there's a number other than 1 in front of the x squared, the problem's going to take about 4 times as long to get it right. So given that, just make sure that you know that when you see that, it's going to take some time and it's going to take some guessing, but you will get better at guessing, and that's the great part. You'll see with time that you'll know what guesses are so bad they're not even worth trying. Okay, so I am going to right now. You're done with your assignment. If that made sense to you. If not, please go ahead and play it back. Try it again, and make sure that you have some sense for what's going on here. I'm going to post the homework assignment, and again, as usual, you can start it early if you want, but it's going to be designed to be done during. We'll have the opportunity during our next meet session to actually do the homework. So with that, I'm going to let you guys go and look forward to seeing you at our next meet session. Take care now. All right, so in the first example, one of the things that we didn't talk about is sometimes we don't have to worry. We can make the problem a lot easier just by factoring out a greatest common factor. And if you look at this first example, we can do that. Notice that each of these terms has a 5. So we can take the 5 out, if you remember, and then I got 5x squared plus 15x plus 10, and I'm going to divide everything by 5, right? Okay, and so now I've got, let me go ahead and find some more space. Sorry about that. Let me put it over here. So now it's going to be 5 times, the 5 goes into the 5x squared, x squared times, 5 goes into the 15x, 3x times, and the 5 goes into the 10, 2. Now I'm not done yet, because this is going to be able to factor x and x, and this is an easy one to factor because there's a 1 there's a 1 for the lead term. So now I need two numbers that multiply to 2 and add up to 3. That shouldn't be too hard. That's going to be plus 2 and plus 1, I believe, right? So now we're fully factored. So one of the things that this example is trying to remind us of is that we should always look for a greatest common factor first. And that's definitely something I wish my Algebra 2 students were a little bit better than that. A little bit better at doing. Okay, so example 2. In example 2, we can't, there is a coefficient of the lead term, which is going to make this a little bit different. It's not going to be the multiplies of this adds up to this thing. What we're going to have to do is the following: is we have to recognize that whatever we choose, we have to remember that the first two terms have to multiply to 4x squared. So how can we do that? Well, there's actually two ways that we can do that. We can actually choose 4x and x. And again, we're looking at the f of FOIL. We need to make sure that the f of FOIL is 4x squared. And in this case, that works. It's another way we could have done that too, is to say 2x and 2x. Now the f of FOIL still gives us the 4x squared. That's fine. So we're going to focus on, with these problems, as being sure that we have the f of FOIL and the L of FOIL. So what's the last, what does the L of FOIL give us? The last numbers multiply to become 3. So let me just guess. I'm going to put the number plus 1 and plus 3. Oh my goodness! Let me undo that, because unfortunately that was the right guess. let me make a wrong guess first, just so you can see what's going to happen here. I'm going to say plus 3 here and plus 1 here. So that makes the L of FOIL come out to 3. That means I'm unsure that F works and the L works, right? My first turned out to 4x squared. My last multiplied to 3. Now I do the OI check. Now the OI check means the outsides and the insides. Multiply them out and add them, and you're going to get 7x. Check the middle term here. Is that 7x? No, it is not. So that means that we put these numbers aren't going to work in the way that they are. One of the things that we'll always do first is we'll switch the numbers in questions like this. So I'm going to switch the 3 to become a 1 and the 1 to become a 3. So I'm going to make that 1 and make that 3. I switched the numbers. Now, again, the F of FOIL works, the L of FOIL works. Now let's do the OI check. OI check, 12x plus 1x for 13x. Is that what I wanted? Yes, it is. So this is the answer. 4x plus 1 times x plus 3. The book does it a little bit more formalized. They talk about the factors of 4. In other words, this is the F, and then the factors of 3. This is my my L of foil, and then the middle term they check later. That's our OI check for us. So we're doing this a little bit differently, if that's okay. Let's look at the next one, B. And again, we need to be able to have our first terms. Let me rewrite this. 3x squared minus 7x plus 2. Now, again, we're going to get our little parentheses in first. And we need to be able to make sure that the first terms multiply to 3x squared. Well, there's only one way to do that, all right? Is to make one 3x and make the other one x, all right? Now, we need 2 terms that are going to give us our L. So again, this is our first F of foil, and now we need 2 numbers that multiply out to give me the L of foil. Well, guess what? There's really only one way to get 2. But you might notice that the middle term is a negative in this case. So that means that the OI test needs to produce negative numbers. So instead of using +1 and +2 to get the L, we'll use -1 and -2. So I'll go, I'm going to deliberately do the wrong ones. I know that this is not right. So now I do the OI check. The OI check is going to give me, right, -3 and -2 for a -5 x. Is that what I want? No. So switch the numbers and see what happens. All right. Switch the numbers and I get -1 times -2. So -1 times -2 gives me my L, my last numbers, and the 3x and x gives me my first. And so now I do the OI check to see if I can get the -7. -6 -1 from -7x. Yes, so therefore this is the correct factorization. Okay, so again, all we're trying to do is ensure that we get the first term and the last term, and then we do the OI check to make sure that we get the right middle term. And if we don't get the right middle term, then we just realign the numbers, switch the numbers, or try a new set of numbers. Okay. So let's go to the next page. And here's some that are a little bit different. Okay, so here's our number. And again, we're not doing this the way the book is doing it. Just hoping that you're okay with my method. So let's set these numbers up. We need to set up the firsts. So the F of foil is going to have to multiply to 2x. So what numbers am I going to do for that? How about 2x and x? It doesn't matter which one you put where, but 2x in the x works. Now, tricky part is I need 2 numbers that multiply to -7. Well, there's really only one way to multiply to get 7. You got 1 and 7. Look at that. You got 1 and 7. One would need to be positive, and the other one would need to be negative. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to guess. And again, this is pretty much what we're doing, is guessing and checking. We guess and do an OI check. So let's put 2 numbers in that multiply to -7. I'm going to start with, I'm going to go -7 and +1, because there's only one way to, there's only a couple ways to get -7. +1, -7, and then -7, and then +7 and -1. The signs have to be opposite. So let's go ahead and that's our first guess. We know that we got the F and L of foil set. The only thing we have to check is the OI check. So OI check gives me minus 14 plus 1 is minus 13. That's not going to work. So let's switch the numbers. It's always going to be our first thing to do is switch the numbers. Great place for an eraser, right? And okay, so here we're going to go, now I'll go plus 7 and minus 1. Again, we got the first term's giving me my 2x squared. Oops, sorry about that, 2x squared. My last term's giving me minus 7. Let's do the OI check. Minus 3 plus 7. Minus 3 plus 7 is positive 4x. That's not going to do it, is it? Oh, I'm sorry about that. No, that's 2x plus 7, minus 2x plus 7x. I'm sorry. That's going to be plus 5x. Well, that's pretty darn close, isn't it? Now, you're going to find that if you get the right number but the wrong sign, all that means is that we just need to go back in here and change the sign, the 7 to a minus sign, and then change the other to a plus sign. So just change the signs. Now do the OI check. Now the OI check gives me minus. Gives me minus 5x, which is the one we want. So this becomes our factorization. That's the correct one. So hey, no doubt that this is a lot of time, a lot of guessing and checking to be able to finally get the right one. You will find with time that you will be able to guess these things a lot easier. You'll for instance, on this one here, you wanted to make sure that the bigger number is going to be negative. Some of you are going to find out that it's easier to guess that negative 7 is going to be it. So anyway, let's go ahead and try some sample problems, and let me go ahead and find a few. And oh, actually, we can go to the front page and do those.